begin in New England, where Jerod Mayo named Jacoby Brissett the starter over rookie quarterback Drake Maye. Now, he has credited Maye with outplaying Brissett, but this feels like maybe a long-term play in a lot of ways. Here's more from Mayo on the decision.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors that led to this choice. I think, the hard part is thinking in the short term and the long term at the same time. As an organization, though, we feel like Jacoby gives us our best chance to win right now. I don't want to get into hypotheticals. We can't go into the season saying, well, he's going to go X amount of weeks. Like, look, as long as Jacoby's going out there performing the way that we all have confidence in him doing, he'll be our quarterback this season.
We now welcome in Patriots reporter Mike Reiss. And Mike, you've been right there for all of training camp. We now finally have this decision. What's the reaction in the locker room to the quarterback news?
This was the expectation here in Foxborough. I'll take you right inside the Patriots locker room. When reporters were in there late this morning, Jacoby Brissett was waiting for us. He talked about how meaningful it is for him to be named the starter. He also praised Drake Maye, saying he's light years ahead of where he was when he first got here. He said Maye came up to him and told him, anything you need, I'm here for you. And Brissett said that works both ways. Their lockers are right next to each other. When Brissett finished talking, then Maye stepped in. We just shuffled right over, and Maye said he can look at it in two different ways. The competitor in him would love to play, but he understands that Brissett has experience in this system, and he's worked with the ones throughout training camp. Maye saying, I have no regrets. I left it all out there. Laura?
Yeah, Mike Brissett will be a wonderful mentor, which is important here. Mina Kimes now with us. Dan, do you like the decision to start Jacoby Brissett over Drake Maye?
Absolutely, but I do want to give New England credit here, because when an organization sets a plan and there's a potential deviation from that plan, Drake Maye's play and development, and then the noise and then the pressure, so often in this league, teams give in. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we should not have. So I want to give them credit for having the discipline to go about and executing this plan. Now the challenge is, how disciplined will you be? Because I don't expect New England to be very good this year. And the noise is going to not go away. They're going to say at some point, Jacoby might not play as up to an expected level, and they're not going to block, and then all of a sudden the team isn't doing as well as they were hoping back end of October. It's like, play Drake Maye. No. You were disciplined in August, stayed disciplined throughout the great majority of this season. Credit to them for pulling it off. Jerod Mayo, the timeline marries. There's no pressure to get that young man on the field and have to prove that you made the right pick. It's going to be really important for them to have the long-term picture as the most important part when it comes to Drake Maye for the great majority of this season.
Yeah.
I think what's going to be tricky, Dan, is if Brissett struggles after a few weeks and there's pressure, there's calls coming to start Maye. A big part of why he will struggle probably will be the offensive line, right, which was a big part of why you didn't start Drake Maye in the first place. So the decision was difficult. Now it actually is going to be even more difficult further on. And to be clear, it's one that I support. I am usually in favor of young quarterbacks playing, frankly, but this is a unique situation because of the offensive line. If we look back at the first-round draft picks, the quarterbacks taken who never developed, a common thread with many of those quarterbacks, especially in recent history, is bad pass protection. Not just because it can be honestly unsafe, but also because it can lead to bad habits, dropping your eyes, bailing on clean pockets, not trusting that your line will show up, not trusting that you have time to go through your progression. So keeping Drake Maye out of that situation, if it is as bad as it seemed in the preseason, it makes the world of sense to me. But in a few weeks, if this offense struggles, that's when the decision will get even more difficult.
I completely agree with Mina and Dan. And to Mina's point about pass protection, let's just go back a year ago, guys. Bryce Young got hit way too many times, and Anthony Richardson only lasted 5 games. If the four of us were running the New England Patriots, all we care about is Drake Maye great for the next 10 years,
Correct,
not the next 10 weeks. And to me, the uncertainty of the offensive line, you have a new head coach who is very inexperienced, and you have a play caller who's never called plays. So get the offensive line settled. This is why you brought in Jacoby Brissett and his 78 games played, just like a Gardner Minshew type. Get things settled down, and in 6 or 7 weeks, you can reevaluate things. But to Mina's point, a healthy Drake Maye at the end of this year is job number 1 for the Patriots.
Mike T, so as a general manager, right, the perspective of Jerod Mayo being able to prove that he's capable of being a championship caliber head coach without high-level quarterback play. You know what I'm saying? But we lived that with the Jets.
We started Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez together, and as rookies, we got to the championship game.
But Mark played as a rookie, right? And
Yeah.
you guys had an elite world-class defense and remarkable run game.
And I could have done a better job of having a better backup, so maybe Mark didn't have to start from day one.
But you know what I'm asking? Can Jerod Mayo prove to New England and Elliott Wolf or whoever's making the decision that I'm the right choice as the head coach without playing Drake Maye?
100%. I mean, you know a good head coach when you see it in terms of how he's from a strategist, deploying personnel, or the team getting better, penalties, turnovers, things like that. Are they a team that's hard to beat?
Yeah.
And they're just falling short in explosive plays. And look, there's a lot of teams playing the Jacoby Brissetts of the world. Like we've seen, look, go back to right now what's going on with the Raiders. Certainly, you know, when you look at the Saints, we're not going to see high-level quarterback play, and those teams still could win games.
It's interesting, too, because you got to think they know what was already in place, what they handed to Mayo.
Totally.
The Patriots had the worst pass block win rate, if you go specifically to the O-line, in the NFL last season, the fourth worst of any team since 2017. Still not practicing. Head coach Zach Taylor admitted he may have spoke too soon this week, saying Jamar would be back and was likely to play week 1 against those Patriots we were just talking about. Jamar made a statement of his own following that as he stood on the sideline at practice. Now, Chase has been vital to the success of Joe Burrow, who the Bengals just paid last season. Chase has been on the field for 69% of Burrow's career attempts, and no surprise, his yards on those attempts increase and his QBR elevates from 49 to 60. Now, most importantly, those numbers have translated to wins. Burrow has gone 24-14 when Chase plays compared to 5-8 without. Dan, when do you think is time to actually hit panic button in Cincy?
Oh, I would say panic would be a week from now or so, like
Yeah.
next Wednesday, next Thursday, because if it's not resolved then it's absolutely going to spill into the regular season. I'm highly concerned with what's happened over the last 48 hours with the late arrival yesterday and then the no-show. Here's the thing. I think Cincinnati can be okay if it's a week or two without Jamar, because T. Higgins is really good. Okay, now not Super Bowl caliber, but the question is, and this was, excuse me, a little bit. Cooper Kupp was on Ryan Clark's The Pivot podcast this past week, and he was talking about in the Super Bowl, the plan was for it to be the OBJ game. Like Cooper knew that he was going to get double teamed, and it was like, OBJ, go do you. Well, in this story, Jamar is Cooper Kupp, and T. Higgins is OBJ. T's been amazing. We don't know if T's ready to become like that guy, you know, where you could be the person to get double teamed and constantly dominate. So it's a high-level concern already. Panic a week from now.
Yeah, this really snuck up on us,
Yeah.
guys, because I didn't think it was going to get this far, and it's a huge deal just for the Super Bowl aspirations, as Dan alluded to. I think for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the first and foremost, Jamar Chase is incredible talent. I mean, he's such a unique player. He's so tough, so great with the ball in his hands, but also I think an underrated route runner. He is a true number one in every sense of the word, and I love the way they moved him around last year. You take him out, and suddenly you realize this group of skill players is not very deep. It's very top-heavy with Chase and Higgins, because after those receivers, it's extremely young. Now Tyler Boyd's gone. There's some talent there, but a lot of youth. The tight end group, you had Mike Gesicki. It's okay. Running backs room, again, I don't think anyone would put in the top 10, 15 in the NFL. They have invested in the offensive line, but because it is so top-heavy, if you take Chase out, I think there's a disproportionate effect on this offense compared to other teams maybe where you're moving number one wide receiver.
Guys, I've negotiated with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, that's in the context of a trade. They are very principled negotiators. They are not going to move. I don't know how this gets resolved. Jamar Chase makes roughly close to $5 million a year. That's 1/7 of what the top receiver is getting. He didn't play his last year at LSU. When we were talking about the CeeDee Lambs and the Brandon Ayuks of the world, this was the one to me. I don't know how it gets resolved. And eerily, this is starting to remind me a little bit of Jalen Ramsey in Jacksonville. And if he doesn't play in the first couple weeks, guys, could a trade be on the table? I know that's something Cincinnati doesn't want to do, but I can't imagine, based on my experience with them, I don't think Cincinnati is going to change their position. And I just see Jamar Chase getting more dug in.
One thing really fast to point out, he has 2 years left on his rookie deal. That's why this is a little bit different here. They still have, the team does, control. So if you're looking at it just purely from a business perspective, they're thinking, why would I relinquish that and pay more? Go ahead, and then Dan.
Right, and that's why Jamar Chase said, well, I could withhold my services.
Yeah, I mean,
Bingo.
so to your point, 2 years left on the deal, but he's also, like Mina touched on a little bit, there's not a ton of guys in the league that are uniquely gifted and in a system that the system literally builds the offense through you. Michael Thomas used to do it in New Orleans. It's a little bit of Tyreek Hill. I have a question, though, because it never makes sense to me, because if I was the Cincinnati Bengals, like, my perspective is it is next year this time, you're going to sign Jamar Chase. Like, if he was going into his fifth year.
Yeah.
So why do teams not just go, you're going to sign him next year, why not just sign him right now?
Because you have a 5-year contract, and if we tear up the last 2 years of your deal, while we solve today's problem, we just created 5 more the next day.
What, though? What's the next problem? Is that problem bigger than not having him?
Well, that's what the judgment of teams is how do you solve those problems and what precedent do you create? And look, we all know that Jamar Chase has outperformed his contract, Dan, but fundamentally is if you tear up his deal, someone's going to knock on your door and say, hey, what are you doing for me?